Well, Jeff, welcome.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Twitch new podcast studio.
Twitch, that's
You're
a
in
good name.
Nantwich. Do you like that
Super.
name?
I do, yes. I met some lads on London Road in the summer, and they were loading guitars and amps into the back of what looked like Mum and Dad's car, and I asked them where they were going, and they were called at the time Twitch's Rats. I said, "How do you get that?" I said, "Well, Twitch is Nantwich, and we just play a bit of punky, rocky stuff."
Brilliant.
So, and it turns out that their grandparents have joined Nantwich Civic Society.
Well, that's a brilliant start to introducing our new podcast and our guest today. So, Jeff Stubbs, tell us about you first of all. And first question: are you a dabber, honorary or original?
I'm not an original dabber. I would have liked to have been. But then, life is different, isn't it? You arrive at Nantwich like we did 21 years ago. I was born in Wales and I learnt Welsh till I was 13, but I only tell people that when Wales win at rugby, and that's not been a lot lately. But I was born just inside Wales, about 2 miles inside the border, near Chester. And my life revolved around John Summers Steelworks. It became British Steel. And the whole area was dominated by the steelworks, which employed 13,500 people.
Crikey.
On 3 shifts, 365 days a year. It was an incredible time of life, really, because everybody depended on it. Anyway, I passed my exams. Otherwise, I'd have been in the steelworks and probably been made redundant 15 years later, like thousands were. And I went to Aberystwyth University, studied geography, and somebody was smiling from above because 3 days in, I met Jackie, to whom we've been married for, I've got to get this right, haven't I? 55 years this September.
Lovely.
So, I met her on the first dance that we had, and we've been together all that time. We both graduated in geography, and I got a postgraduate course in Leeds to do town planning, and we spent a very character-building 9 months in Chapeltown, living in the roof of a great big house. Not very nice, but as I say, character building. And then at the end of the 12 months, I got a job in Oldham. Not really heard about Oldham very much, and it was quite a surprise when we drove in. But the advantage of Oldham was they could rent us a council flat that didn't have mice in the attic. And I had a job with Oldham for 5 years.
Right.
A very different world then. Oldham was in the throes of redevelopment. A lot of houses were being compulsory purchased because despite what people say what was lovely in those days, the houses were absolutely terrible. A lot of them had been built without damp-proof courses. They were rotten, no good, not sanitation. And that was the way of the world then, to knock them down and put new buildings up, which I must say are nothing to be proud of really in terms of architecture. But it did get people living in healthier conditions.
What time? What decade are we talking about here?
I was 71. I was.
Right. Okay.
And one of my first jobs for the new lad was getting buildings cleaned. It's hard to imagine now but industrial towns, the buildings were absolutely black because of the soot from domestic, but principally from the chimneys of the cotton mills. I mean, stokes like that, the smoke that was generated made everywhere black. So the government, in its wisdom, which was good, we had cleaning up all the major buildings. So that was one of my jobs. And the other job was plant a tree in 73. Trips off the tongue,
doesn't it just?
And again, it was one of the first environmental moves that the government made to get more trees planted. So wherever there was some scratty bits of land or crofts, as they used to call them in Lancashire, I got trees planted by the Parks Department. From there, I went over Pennines, over Tops to Huddersfield. It was called Kirklees, and I worked for 5 years there. And both areas were industrial. I think I mentioned to you a while ago that just looking back, apart from Nantwich, wherever I've lived, it's been big industry, whether it was steel, cotton. Over in Yorkshire, it was woolen, textiles, engineering, and I was very comfortable in that. I always found the sort of history of big industry, quite exciting. The challenge was try to manage the decline and keep the buildings that were worth keeping, and some of these mills were wonderful buildings. Try to find new uses for them within the planning.
But there must have been quite an exciting time then. Look at some of these buildings, some of these places that have been, the old mills have been turned into, whether it be flats or units or hotels or whatever. Yeah, it's quite fascinating. To imagine what it would have been like. And
I went back to Halifax for a civic trust meeting. It was a 2-day conference in the Peace Hall, Halifax, which is another wonderful building. But I think the principal excitement was going back to a place called Dean Clough Mills, which are on the edge of the centre. And I remember the day going into work, and the news was Crossley Carpets has just closed down overnight. And Crossley Carpets were the best carpets in the country, and they employed that time something like 2,000 people, and everybody was just out of work. And within 3 days, English Heritage, it wasn't called English Heritage then, but they became listed buildings, grade 2 star, because Crossley Carpets had done very little with them, which is perhaps part of the story why they didn't modernise enough, and other markets took their place. Anyway, we were left as a local authority looking after, it was nearly 1 million square feet of stone mills, some of them built back into the hillside, and they had their own railway line that went into the bottom part, and they were called the coal drops. And then the stroke of luck was that it was bought by an entrepreneur called Ernest Hall, and he had a partner called Jonathan Silver, a younger man, and they took it on out of ignorance, he says, really. He was just they were excited by these buildings, and they just let anybody go in and do whatever they wanted. And we cooperated with them because the importance was getting it used. Because if it wasn't used, it'd be derelict. Somebody had set a fire on it, but while they were occupied, and gradually it's become first-class accommodation. There's a hotel in it, there's BBC studios, there's insurance. Ernest Hall was an art lover and became an excellent concert pianist as well as a wealthy businessman. Gosh. He married Prue Leith for a few years. Yeah. Right. What a character. And we went back there, and it was absolutely wonderful to see. It turned a real problem set of buildings into absolute pride and joy, and it anchors the economy of the town centre.
So that really gives us a good indication as to why you're so passionate about Nantwich and involved in the Civic Society and Nantwich. And we often have talks about empty shops and empty buildings and that kind of thing. Before we go on to that, just tell us what brought you to Nantwich, the least sort of industrial town that you could probably imagine, really.
Yeah, I think that's why I fell in love with it. I mean, I finished work for local government for Halifax, and then I had a job in Manchester for a planning consultancy, which was really interesting because I was on the opposite side of the counter, really. But it was a good 5 years. And my wife was still working for education, but when she had to finish work, we thought, well, why are we staying here? When she was travelling down the motorway regularly to see her mum and dad who were getting on, and sometimes it would be 3 hours, or one day it was something like 8 hours stuck. So we said, well, let's see if we can move somewhere flatter. Where we lived outside Oldham, we always stayed outside Oldham in Shaw. It was 750 feet up on the west face of the Pennines and extremely steep. And we said, perhaps it's better to go somewhere flatter. And experience shows that was the right choice. So we started looking down the M6. And then I remembered my uncle, Alan Stubbs, had been in Nantwich. He lived in Coppice Close at Williston. And he was the manager of, it was Calmick at Crewe Hall. Borough's Welcome owned them, and he was a manager there. And we always thought, Nantwich is a nice place. I'll never live there. It's lovely. Anyway, fate decided us that when we got to Nantwich, it was the best of the towns. It was just love at first sight, really, because it was totally different to where we'd lived before. Not dramatic moorland and hills and huge mills, but lovely history in one area. Fabulous. So with my love of old buildings, and I must say I wasn't just looking at old buildings in my planning career, I did please some sectors of the Calderdale, as it was called, Halifax, and upset a lot of local residents because we had to allocate land for new development. So that's another story. So when we came to Nantwich, it was super. We decided to be able to find somewhere where we could walk into town, which we do most days. Sometimes I just walk into town because I like it and find a reason to go and buy something. And then I walk the long way around because I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And I like Nantwich because it's not such a twee place. It's not chocolate box nice. It's a living, breathing town with its good and less good sides, but it's got everything. So how did I get in chairman of the Civic Society? When we came, I said to my wife, I've done enough environmental stuff and planning. I'm not going to do anything. And then I think there was an advert in the paper, AGM and open evening. And I just said, I'll go along and see what it's like. So 12 months later, I became chairman. Once they found out I'd been a planner and the previous chairman finished, he went to live abroad. So all fingers pointed at me, and that would have been nearly 19 years ago, even 20. So, I've been chairman and first meetings were held upstairs in the museum because we only had about 10 or 12. And over the years, we've graduated for the last 10 or 15 years to the gallery at the back of the museum. And we had 30 odd at the January meeting. Yeah,
you have a really good strong
20 odd.
attendance.
I'm really
Monthly
pleased.
meetings, isn't it?
Monthly meetings every third Tuesday, 7:30, the museum down the side alley. But it always has lights on it now, which is good. And if anybody's interested in coming along, sitting in, do come.
What kind of things do you discuss and lobby for or talk about?
Well, the agenda always looks at current planning applications. Sometimes in the last few years it's been pretty dead. And then all of a sudden you'll have a flurry of new applications, and we look at things, small details on listed buildings, well, in the town centre particularly, and also building developments, new residential developments. It might surprise people to know that when there was an application which has become Kingsbourne, we supported the principle of it. I know a lot of local civic societies don't like change, but we've got a view in the Civic Society that change will happen anyway. Yeah. You can't stop change, and change in many ways is a good thing. So we didn't object at all to the principle of the development of 1,000 houses, but we did have our input into the design and layout. Not as much as we would have liked, but we had 2 presentations from the developers, extremely slick people. They knew their stuff. They employed consultant after consultant to produce reams and reams of paper, and they got planning permission, which has been good for the town.
Would that have been when you said that they pitched you? Would that have been Red Road, David Wilson, and the other one, all 3 of them together?
That consortium.
They right.
Yeah, they had a spokesperson for the consortium, and I think what I'm most disappointed about is we tried to get them to build a village, and we said, look, 1,000 houses. It was 1,100 at first, but 1,000 houses is the size of a pretty good village. Yeah. Why can't you make it more villagey, with a bit more, wiggly streets and lines, and not just long rows? And he sort of nodded, but ignored us. But it has made they did make a difference. I know we had some success in keeping the hedges and the trees and getting some of there's one long green avenue that bisects the development, and we also pressed for them to have local facilities, school, doctors, but that's difficult to get. But I noticed the planning application we dealt with on Tuesday was an application for a new local co-op, and there's a site been set aside, and there's a co-op and another unit that are applying for planning permission. Needless to say, we support that, and it's it'll be good for the residents as a local shop.
It's all going to be in the same area. So the Kingsbourne Academy and the shop, the co-op, it's all going to be in that.
Yeah, it's at the back or close.
At the back of the football club.
So and our view was that at the time the internet was taking lots of people away from shops. There was a terrible time when, not in Nantwich so much, but in lots of big towns, and in the end Manchester city centre, a lot of big shops closed because people were using the internet, and they weren't walking out and buying stuff in the local towns. So our view was, let's try and encourage development, sensible development, to get the footfall, or to maintain the footfall, keep the footfall up in town, and hopefully keep the shops going. With the other developments we've had on Stapley and up the top of Queen's Drive,
Malbank Water.
The footfall in town is really high, even on a Sunday.
Definitely. And it's developed that, hasn't it? Because I came up here 18 years ago, and I remember standing in the town square on a wet November day outside the Nantwich bookshop, looking around thinking, well, it's Sunday, it's raining. This isn't Kingston upon Thames, where we would go shopping and go to the Bental Centre and it'd be full of people. This is very different. And I remember looking up at the bookshop thinking, old buildings, like you, this is where I want to be. I saw the sign for Nantwich, welcome to Nantwich, a floral market town. And I thought, buildings and flowers, that'll do me nicely. Thank you very much. But over the years, and definitely since lockdown, when some of the shops moved out, or the cafes moved out onto the street, some of that's stayed, and people coming into town on a Sunday just for a wander and a coffee has now developed it to a sort of 7-day-a-week thriving.
It is.
Town,
it's thriving, and I think it's true what you say about COVID. I mean, that was a big shock. But the alfresco dining, I remember thinking it's cold in Nantwich at times, and people won't sit outside, but they do. And the alfresco dining has really changed the character. It's made it livelier. And one of our members, just before Christmas, counted 25 establishments in town. It's probably 26 at Starbucks that served, that were cafes. And he didn't count the pubs either. So with this preponderance that is never ending for consuming coffee and tea, Nantwich is doing really well.
We have such strong support in our town for the independents, don't we? I put something out the other day on my Nantwich Info Facebook group about Starbucks. Well, I didn't actually. I shared the message that Enzo had put out saying, crikey, this is hard. This is a shock to us, but please do remember your independence. And, there was over 100 comments, and only 2 people said, it's fine, don't worry about it. It's, we like Starbucks. But everybody was very much in support of the independents and shared all their favourites.
I think so. And despite Starbucks and Costa being international companies, they still provide an experience and taste of coffee that a lot of people like. What they need to do is, if they come for Starbucks, go across the road and see what a good job our local independents make of it.
Of course, they bring jobs in as well. We can't.
Despite the issues about, they don't pay tax in this country, but there's quite a few people going to be employed. I think I read there are about 30 odd jobs in Starbucks, different part-time jobs and full-time. So you can't knock that. No.
And they've brought the building up to standard. Is that what you were going to say?
I was just going to say that. we looked at that in the Civic Society for probably a couple of years, thinking, by the heck, that's a difficult building to do anything with. And it was even more difficult when I did manage to poke my head through when they first started. The contractors there were saying, this is a bit bigger than we'd thought. We've got to do all the floors.
The floor was like that, wasn't it?
And they were worried about when they broke out the floors, what they'd find. But anyway, a terrific job's been made of it to one of the flagship buildings. But on Tuesday, we also happily discussed the arrival of the White Stuff in a totally different building, the former NatWest Bank, which I think NatWest architecture has wreaked havoc throughout lots of historic towns in the 70s. But anyway, the White Stuff have got an application because they intend to come and retail ladies' clothes. Do they do men's clothes?
I think they do men's as well.
Right, somewhere else to spend money. Great, that's what you do. And they're going to bring the plate glass windows right out to the front where there was an overhang. So you'll have, shop front right on the edge of the pavement.
Which will detract from that, the whole kind of grey concretiness of NatWest. And
then the other good detail is they're going to make the horizontal plinth just above the shop fronts. They're going to colour that grey or black.
Lovely.
So it won't look as concretey.
Brilliant.
And I think that'll, keep the eye going through along High Street. So we look at planning applications. We comment on the latest things that are both national planning and also within Cheshire East. We didn't examine it, but we mentioned that Cheshire East have just made a call for sites because they're doing a new local plan, which is where land has to be allocated for housing and business, and the various policies about nature and parking, for instance, have to be updated. But the biggie really is they ask the community, and it's principally the developers and landowners, to suggest sites that they could bring forward. So there'll probably be quite a mad rush at in the next few months, and then the planners will have to consider which are the most appropriate sites. What's happening now is quite alarming for a lot of people because the government, it was the last government as well as the new one, they said that the housing shortage is so great we need to make it easier to build houses. So if local authorities haven't got an up-to-date local plan, in other words, if it's more than 5 years old, then they can't show that they've got enough housing land supply. And that means that at the moment, until Cheshire East get a local plan up and running, the presumption is that housing developments will be allowed, subject to things like drainage and proper safe access and environmental constraints.
So there'll be more, the likelihood is there could be more
housing
popping up.
Yeah, we've seen quite a few pop up in areas that we wouldn't have considered feasible, but likely. But they are. And the pressure is always that people need places to live. As a planner, I mean, I was always conscious and criticised by local people about, oh, we don't want any more houses. And then you realise that, well, where they live used to be a farm, or it used to be green fields.
Which kind of also links back to something that we talk about a lot about farming and how tough the farming world is now. And, you know, I know, obviously, I'm very involved in Nantwich Show and lots of farmers, but we know how tough it is for farmers. And we know that some of them, the only option is to sell the land because they're not getting a return on it. They're not going to be able to sustain their next generation or maybe two siblings with the next generation on their farm. So the natural answer to them is to sell the land, which is likely to go to housing. And you know, if we support our farmers a bit more, maybe they won't need to sell the land. They won't see the land sale as a number one option for them.
Yes, yeah.
And then we won't have as many developments.
Was a planner before. It was in the Pennines, and farming was not very important. It was upland sheep farming, if that. So I wasn't very aware, really, or knowledgeable of farming. But since coming to Nantwich, I've really enjoyed learning about farming and cycling around the lanes, standing up on the pedals and having a look over the, and you see and smell what farming's like. Yeah. So I'm really disappointed that farmers, for instance, dairy farmers, are not paid the price of production for their milk. And it's just extortion by the main supermarkets. And I can't understand how the supermarkets can think that farmers can carry on being paid less for their milk. And it's dropped recently, just before Christmas. And how will they keep having a milk supply? And I'm sure consumers are not that price sensitive to a few pence on a pint or a litre of milk, and that'd keep the farmers going. It's the same for meat as well. So I'm much more conscious and admiring of farmers.
Absolutely.
And it's 365 day a week job, isn't it?
And I've certainly become that way since I'm obviously married to an ex-dairy farmer and run the Nantwich Show, but really that my interest and passion for supporting local food producers started when I moved to Nantwich 18 years ago. Because really, from where I was brought up in Kingston upon Thames, it was go to the supermarket. That was it. The same thing. We would eat out for birthdays and twice or three times a year. Whereas now we seek out local produce and restaurants and pubs that serve your favourite local produce. And it's such a different world now, isn't it?
It is. And we've got some good choice, haven't we, in town? But I always like shopping on the market.
Market's brilliant. Nantwich Market has absolutely really pulled their socks up in the last, I don't know, 5 years, is it, since COVID maybe? Just they really gelled as a team of traders in COVID. You know, they've got the flags up. The town council have done a really, really good job, I think, of bringing the market to life.
I think they have, and it's made a big difference to the town.
Definitely.
Farmers markets. So I was very excited when they had a farmers market. It was good. I'd spent far too much for the first few times. But it's good to see farmers coming from Wales selling their meat and cheese and all sorts of lovely goods.
And we have lots of different markets. We've got the JDL mini markets, we have the vintage markets, the artisan markets, the farmers markets. There's all sorts, isn't there, going on?
It's so much choice in
it's
town.
It's such a lovely town, and you know, my tagline for Nantwich Info is "the small town with the big buzz." That was because I genuinely feel that as a town we punch far more than our weight in what we do, from the events to the shops to the community.
You're right, yes. I embarrass my wife sometimes by talking to people in the street, usually if they're looking up at the houses or they've got the leaflet, the town trail or something. And I usually ask them if they're looking for somewhere and then get talking to them. And I'm really pleased that the visitors love the town. I could bore them to death for another hour, but I do let them get on. I tell them where to go to the local cafes and pubs and restaurants. But people who come into town are surprised by it.
Yeah. I never forget, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but years ago when, as Redshift Radio, we used to do the music in the town square for the food festival. So it was a couple of years on the bounce, where it was when in Deborah Robb's days when she used to run it. We had paper surveys to ask people. So we would go around and we would stand in the town centre and catch people and say, you know, why are you here? I'll never forget talking to one couple who came from Yorkshire, and they had put an offer in buying a house in Northwich. They were just bringing the kids over from Yorkshire to Northwich to see the house, and they saw the roadside boards for the food festival and thought, oh, let's pop in and see what this is like. They said to me that day they took their offer off the house in Northwich and been to an estate agent and were looking at moving to Nantwich. Just goes to show that the events that we do in town and the town itself, it sells itself, doesn't it? People that were going to completely bypass Nantwich, didn't know Nantwich necessarily existed until they came in for an event and moving their whole family, buying a property, bringing their life to Nantwich. I think.
Yes,
I always remember that.
It's a bit of a hidden gem, really.
Yeah,
it's only when you live in it.
Family are listening to this podcast. That'd be interesting if that
Wouldn't
family is still
lovely?
listening.
That would be fabulous, wouldn't it? Yeah, that would be good.
One of the things that struck me when I decided to live here or moved here, it's a town with an identity of its own. It's not. From where I'm from in Kingston, it moves on to Surbiton, to Wimbledon, to New Malden. Everything kind of merges.
Yes.
But Nantwich has got a really strong identity. Yes, it is getting bigger. And yes, we have got Kingsbourne and we have got different estates and things. But I still think Nantwich has got a fabulous history and a fabulous community and an identity of its own.
Quite right. The historic core of Nantwich, I'm proud to tell people and the visitors alike that we've got, apart from Chester City, it's got the most listed buildings in Cheshire.
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask you. I'd heard that and I was going to check that with you. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It's incredible, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And you've only got to look around and look up.
Yeah, exactly.
Always look up.
Yeah.
Because you're very often looking at the ground or you're looking at in the shops.
Or you're just too busy going from place to place and you forget to look up.
The buildings are fantastic. And it's not just the Elizabethan black and white buildings. There's some superb Georgian and Victorian buildings. And I think my favourite street is Welsh Row, because you start from the bridge and then you wend your way down. It has a lovely curve in it. They're great big Georgian houses, and it's got a bit of everything in it. And you end up at the canal, which is another aspect of the town's amenities that you mustn't forget. And you go across the River Weaver. A lot of people don't know the Weaver's there. And one of the things I've said I'd like to see to open up the river is to get rid of those Armco crash barriers that are along Waterloo, because they visually signal to people that, no, you don't want to go here. And actually, if they were taken down, I know there'd be a danger element, but if they were taken down, you'd see that there's a river down there.
Absolutely.
But I can't see it getting past highway safety engineers
unless
there was another.
Those crash barriers have been used.
I've never seen any scratches on them.
No, exactly.
But it'll be in the national regulations somewhere. But it would make a big difference.
Yeah.
In years ago, when we were a bit younger, we used to have regular cleanups along the river.
Yes,
We do have some now and again, but we're all 10, 15 years older. But with other groups like Nantwich in Bloom, and we had a small group called Green Spaces, we managed to get, I was looking at some photographs where Barclays Bank over in Knutsford wanted a few away days, get people out. And they came, and there was a whole army of them, there were about 40 of them in turquoise Barclays T-shirts. clearing up all around. It was fabulous. Yeah, some people used to say, yeah, what have you done? And they thoroughly enjoyed 2 full days of cleaning up around Mill Island. And then along by the lake, there was a pond, still is a pond, but they actually cleaned it out. They brought their own waders, wheelbarrows, and did smell, but they thoroughly enjoyed cleaning it out, getting the mud out, getting away from computers and spreadsheets. Unfortunately, the man from Nantwich that worked at Barclays got promoted and went somewhere else, and we didn't see them again. Yeah. But I'd love to get involved doing that again, directing it more than doing the hard work these days.
That'd be good, wouldn't it?
But thinking about it those years ago, 10, 15 years ago, we'd choose a Sunday to do our big cleanups. Because Sunday was quiet and you could, paint seats, paint bollards, and nobody would come near. These days, you can't find a time when it's quiet. No. Well, not a sensible
8
time.
8 o'clock on a Sunday morning, maybe, if you're lucky, in February.
But I'm just still, as I said before, I like walking around Nantwich just for the sake of it. And it was one of the best decisions we'd made. If there's a regret, it's that we didn't come here earlier.
Yeah.
But you can't do that because where we lived before was still exciting and interesting. But sitting here looking out over the fields, what a delight.
Thank you very, very much. There's so many things. I'm going to have you back to talk some more about various other aspects and certainly keep us informed as to what's going on in Nantwich. But Jeff Stubbs, thank you very, very much for being part of the launch of my new podcast, The Twitch.
Thank you very much, Liz. It's been a pleasure.
How can people get in touch with you for joining the Civic Society?
Well, we have got a website, www.nantwichcivicsociety.org, and it'll give you some details there. We do have an advert in the link. They're usually the small ones at the back, but we're usually there. So, you can get in touch with us with the details
you meet
there.
On the second Tuesday?
On the third Tuesday of the month. Third Tuesday, 7:30 at Nantwich Museum. And we start with the luxury now of proper slide presentation. When we first started, it was pushing pieces of paper around the table. And life has changed a little bit now. Anybody who'd like to come, we'd love to see you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed,
Thanks, Liz.
Jeff.
Thank you.
1, 2,